Good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Tucker, Executive Director of Jefferson Land Trust. I want to welcome each and every one of you to our 2023 Conservation Breakfast. For those of you who are new to the Land Trust, welcome. And we hope you find this breakfast inspiring, and hopefully it'll develop a desire to learn more about what we do and how we help keep this place special. Before I move forward, I want to also welcome our special guest speaker, Dr. Kathleen Dean Moore. But before we proceed, I want to introduce Blaise Sullivan, who is our conservation coordinator. Blaise.
Thank you, Richard. I'd like to read Jefferson Land Trust's Indigenous Land Acknowledgement. Jefferson Land Trust acknowledges that the lands we work to preserve are within the traditional indigenous tribal lands of the S'Klallam, Chimicum, Tuana, Suquamish, and other indigenous peoples. These indigenous peoples are the original stewards of these lands and waters since time immemorial. Jefferson Land Trust recognizes that European and American colonization irrevocably changed the homeland and ecosystem of the tribes, effectively destroying traditional land access and ways of life. We also recognize that the current system of land ownership and private conservation that we operate within has created and continues to create negative impacts on many marginalized communities. Working in conjunction with local Indigenous peoples and marginalized communities, the Jefferson Land Trust will recognize this immeasurable disruption, and we will strive to lessen the negative impacts of our work, creating a future wherein we seek to deepen our partnerships together and create positive change. We are so grateful this morning to welcome Dana Ward, who is a tribal council member with the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. Dana is going to offer a blessing for the start of our event.
Seamni nischayacha Dana Ward ensna statiklam nutsklayam. Ait squatchy Inuk. I am Dana Ward of the Jamestown S'Klallam, and today it is a good day. I just want to thank you for the invitation to attend your annual Jefferson Land Trust Conservation Breakfast today, and the opportunity to offer up a blessing for this special occasion. And so Blaise, thank you for that introduction. We so appreciate that, and we too appreciate the partnerships with Jefferson Land Trust. So before I ask this blessing on the behalf of the Jamestown S'Klallam people and the other tribes in our tribal council, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, for the friendship and the partnership that we have shared for so many years. I know that Lonnie Grinnell would have loved to have been here with you today, or Chairman Allen, either one. It's always a privilege to partner with those who share a mutual love and respect for the land, the water, and the natural resources that surround this part of the beautiful Olympic Peninsula. We just also want to thank the many staff and volunteers who work tirelessly towards fulfilling the commitment of land and habitat preservation, as well as preservation of farm and the sacred sites and places of value in our communities. Your commitment to ensuring these spaces are available for generations to come resonates with our vision for the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe to preserve and enhance the historical and cultural identity as a strong, proud, self-reliant community while protecting and sustaining our sovereignty, our self-governing authority, our homelands, and our treaty rights. The choices we make today are towards sustaining these values into the next 7 generations to come. So thank you for your partnership in helping steward the land and the waters we all so revere. So I'd like for you to, as I offer up this blessing, participate in your own way, pray in your own way. Our great Father and Creator, we give you thanks for this opportunity to be gathered today, this morning. We are humbled and inspired by the beauty of your creation in this land, and it indeed is a beautiful day of sunshine and blue skies today. As a representative of the S'Klallam people, I give you thanks for those who have joined hands in our vision to protect the land and the waterways of our people that have lived and thrived on this land for since time immemorial. as it was acknowledged in the opening comments. Thank you for this group of people who have invested themselves in caring for the integrity of our Earth's resources. We ask that you bless and prosper the work of this organization. We ask that as it continues to grow and develop, that you would supply the staff and the volunteers to manage the tasks required to make it successful, cause it to thrive, and make an ongoing impact, not only on this generation, but many generations to come. We ask that each life committed to this work will be greatly enriched by their contributions toward the commonality of the goals, caring for and preserving the things of your creation. Thank you for each donor who partners with Jefferson Land Trust. May the funding be sufficient as it is supplied. We give you thanks for all these things of your provision, and it is in your great and mighty name we pray. Ho. Hottenson, thank you for the invitation to join you today.
Thank you very much, Dana. We are honored by your blessing, and also we're very grateful for the partnership with the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe. As you mentioned, it's a deep partnership that goes back many years, and we're looking forward to seeing where our partnership will take us in the future. I'd like to introduce now just a couple of little facts about the Land Trust. So those of you who are new, we've been around since 1989. We started working mainly in habitat protection along Chimacum Creek and also with the Quipper Wildlife Corridor, also known locally as Cappy's Trails. Our first employee was Sarah Spaeth, who gratefully is still with us. And we kind of looked at what we needed to do next, and we decided that perhaps our thriving farm community needed assistance, keeping the land affordable, keeping the land in farming. And so our next area of focus was ag land protection. And I'm happy to say that as of today, we've conserved almost 1,400 acres of farmland in Chimacum and also in Quilcene. Likewise, years later, we moved into working forest lands. And I think we protected over 5,000 acres of working forest lands, which are important to our local economy. We have been growing, and because the needs have grown, and we've had some major projects on the horizon. Our biggest is our 853-acre Chimacum Ridge project, which will become Chimacum Ridge Community Forest. We are planning to close on that property at the end of this year. This will provide a over 900-acre with the adjacent Valley View Forest of a community forest. Now, what is a community forest? It is an area where we will be doing selective harvesting. We will be inviting our neighbors to participate in traditional cedar bark harvesting and harvesting. We will also have recreational activities, educational activities. In fact, we have just completed on the adjacent Valley View Forest property, a beautiful timber frame pavilion, which is open to school groups and other groups to use for environmental education opportunities. We also have numerous projects in the pipeline: farmland protection, habitat protection, and working forest lands throughout Jefferson County. And we're proud to say that in the 33 years we've been in existence, 34 years, we've helped protect over 17,000 acres in Jefferson County. With that, I want to turn and introduce you to a wonderful person, Nan Evans, who is a former board member. She served 8 years on the Jefferson Land Trust board. She's also the host of KPTZ's Nature Now program. And she will be introducing our wonderful guest speaker, Nan.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. That technical detail taken care of. Thank you, Richard, very much. And thank you, everyone who's joined us this morning. It's a delight to have you up and enjoying this sunny day with us. I do want to take just a moment and thank the sponsors of this event, and really important community supporters: the James D. Scheinfeld Family Foundation, Rainier Incorporated, Kristen Mann Waring Insurance, the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe, Seven Cedars Casino, and Carl's Building Supply. Thank you all. And now to introduce our main speaker, which I'm just really excited about having her with us this morning. Kathleen Dean Moore is a philosopher. She's an environmental advocate and an award-winning writer. And she's the Distinguished Professor Emerita of Philosophy at the Oregon State University. Much of her recent work has actually looked at the moral and ethical perspectives on the Earth's climate crisis and the ongoing sixth extinction. And importantly, what we are called upon to do in the face of these catastrophic forces. Her writings are profound, they're beautiful, they're inspiring, and they're honest. And I must say, I have been reading and treasuring Kathleen Dean Moore's work for a number of years. And I especially want to recommend her two most recent books. This is Moment Time. Earth's Wild Music and Take Heart. Earth's Wild Music celebrates and defends the songs of the natural world. And Take Heart is a very special message to encourage Earth's weary lovers. Her presentation to us today will include some videos, some slides, some music, and then after her talk, time allowing, of course, we'll have a question and answer time. At that time, you'll receive some instructions about how to ask your questions via the chat function, but that will be after her talk. And first, we're going to begin Kathleen's talk with a short introductory video.
Listen, as spring begins to rise through March rain, pushing out the first buds of the ossoberry bush. It snowed last night, but this morning a sun-struck alder along the duck bush is raining jingle bells of ice. They chime as they fall through ferns. Listen, the first of the twittering swallows have returned to the farms of the Chimichan Valley. On outstretched wings, they fall through rising columns of air and ride their momentum back into the sky. Over in the Quimper Wildlife Corridor, children call out to their friends. They have found a rough-skinned newt, this astonishing creature that has somehow swum to us from the sea of the stars. From the top of Tamanawas Rock, white mist silently rises from every valley as the hills fold away toward the fog that is the sea. The okalee of a red-winged blackbird rises with the quiet voices of people passing on the wetland trail. Morning, they say, not good morning, morning, because on the Donovan Creek Trail beside the willows, it goes without saying that the morning is. Our work is loving the world, the poet Mary Oliver wrote. Here the sunflowers, there the hummingbird, equal seekers of sweetness. Here the quickening yeast, there the blue plums. Here the clam deep in the sprinkled sand. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still half perfect? Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished, which is mostly rejoicing, which is gratitude, to be given a mind and a heart and these body clothes, a mouth with which to give shouts of joy. Mary Oliver, Messenger. We are all so in love with the world. In fact, I'm a nature writer, and loving the world is what I do for a living. It was all so simple. And nature writing was a love song. So celebrating it was easy. You just go someplace astonishing and open your heart and your notebook and tell the truth. Back then, I'll tell you honestly, the most critical question a nature writer could ask was, what does a nature writer wear? My daughter took me in hand and she took me into a department store and she arrayed me. She said, okay, it's going to be gauzy, layered, light colors, scarves, all these things. So she put all these clothes on me and I walked up and I said to my husband, so do I finally look like a nature writer? He looked at me for a long time and cocked his head and he said, no, you look like a roll of toilet paper. Never mind. Loving the world seemed not only like something I could do, but something I could teach to OSU undergraduates. Because, as Dan said, besides being a writer, I'm a philosophy professor. So some time ago, I taught the philosophy of nature up at this emerald jewel of a lake in the Oregon Cascades. Assignment number 1. The first night, when everybody arrived, dead dark, moonrise, I told the students, without making a sound but the stirring of water, launch a canoe and float on the moonlight that's reflected on the lake. Just sit there, just listen. That's all. Piece of cake. There would be frog song. There would be swirls of light on the water. There might be the silver net thrown by a gust of wind. Maybe bats. Maybe they would be afraid. Maybe they would encounter glory, but always they would have this feeling, I told them, of being held by something that they couldn't see. So they did that. And all my students could say when they paddled back to shore and were finally allowed to speak, I love that. I love that place. But assignment number 2, as you would expect in a philosophy class, you say you love this place. But what does it mean? What does that mean? That's the philosopher's question, and that's the philosopher's curse. And now it's cast on those students. So at breakfast, I handed out the assignment. Half the students were going to walk west around the lake, making a list of what it meant to love a person. The other half were going to walk east, asking, what does it mean to love a place? By lunch, they were back. The 2 groups had come up with the same list, 2 copies of the same list. According to my students, to love a person, a baby, a grandmother, a black-haired girl, a boyfriend, or a place, what, a wetland, a mountain lake, a wildflower prairie, that means at least this. Number 1, to want to be near it, physically, to want to be joined with it, to be taken in by it, lost in it. You know, if there's a trespassing sign or a hurricane fence that keeps us away from a beloved person or a place, our hearts are filled with longing. Number 2, to rejoice in the miraculous fact of it. How could something so wonderful, how could something be so astonishing? And number 3, to be transformed in its presence, to feel whole and embraced where we might have felt isolated or fragmented or alone. There was more. There were items 3 and 4, but we will get to those. This is enough right now for us to hold in our minds. And don't you just love my students? Didn't they do a nice job of expressing what this means to love a place or a person? It's hard to choose an example of a wandering earth love that meets these criteria. You know, I could choose alder trees. I could choose chickadees. I could choose my tall, serious husband. But the example I chose for you today of this wandering earth love The example I chose of this molecular fact of life on Earth is frogs. We love frogs, right? So let me take you back to that lake after the students have gone. So my husband is a scientist, a self-described hard scientist. You should see us trying to paddle a canoe on the lake. Philosopher in the bow, scientist in the stern. I'm rejoicing in the sounds of the night. And my husband is explaining the biomechanics of frog song. Bless him. Imagine blowing up a balloon, he says. Now, imagine blowing up a balloon made of your neck skin, he says. Now, imagine blowing it up to twice your size. Now, he says, hold it there and tremble all night long. Huh. The energetics of this music are so tough, he told me. So much energy is expended that it could kill a frog. So some tree frogs only have enough energy to sing for 3 nights. 3 trembling nights. Imagine that. And then he says, imagine the silence of the frogs on day 4. So I do, right? Wouldn't you? I sit quietly and I listen to that silence. And then he says, now, imagine swallowing a moth so big that you have to push it down your throat with your eyeballs. We look across the lake, this path of the moon, glistening with the discarded wings of 1 trillion flying ants. And we look at the moon itself, bulging out between black mountains. And we note in passing that we're sailing at 1 zillion miles an hour through the darkness, spinning in a spiral galaxy slung across space, slung out with all the singing frogs and the quiet ones, all of us up to our eyeballs in swamp. And if we even think about our own sparking minds on that sparkling lake, think about the molecular structure of awareness or the biochemistry of celebration. Think about the universe singing its own praises in the language of philosophy and science. Well, then we have to hold on to the gunnels to keep from swamping the canoe. That's punished and shaken. What does it mean to love a place? To be blown away by it. To rejoice in the miraculous fact that this beloved place on the planet even exists. This is what I want to say, that a good dose of wonder, a night of roaring frogs, a face full of stars, the kick in the pants of the infinite universe, this huge unknowing. These remind us that there's beauty we didn't create. There's mystery we cannot fathom. There are interests that are not our own. There's time we can't measure. And when we live humbly in the full awareness of the astonishing fact that we have any place at all in this world, we live richer, deeper lives, more fully realizing our humanity. So our love for the world, our joy in it, its glory, this is the foundation of our obligation to its continuing. This is what I want to say. The same impulse that says, this is wonderful, is the impulse that says, this must continue. Yes? If this is the way the world is. Extraordinary. Surprising, beautiful, astonishing, mysterious, contingent, unique, then this is the way I ought to act in the world, with gratitude and celebration, and caring and respect, and above all, with a sense of responsibility to care for it, that it could continue to be. And we agree. But now I have to tell you, 2 years ago, The forest around that beautiful, beloved lake burned to the ground. Wildfire flared up along the road behind the campground, was driven by 50-mile-an-hour winds. And that firestorm ran hard and fast through lodgepole pine tree forests. The fire crews had to pull back. They had to let it burn. At home, helpless, I watched on the internet as the fire expanded until all I could see were red spots encircling that lake, until that whole map was blotching red. And now when I go back, black spars have fallen across the shoreline. A canoe had been thrown up by those ferocious winds into a tree and blackened. And whirlwinds of ash flailed across the water of the lake. It would not have been safe to launch a canoe on that lake. I would never have sent my students out on it at night. So loving the world began to get a whole lot more complicated. Because even as we're celebrating this glorious world, it's slipping away. No, that's not right. It's not slipping away. It is being taken from us. I have to tell you that even as I'm writing about Frog Song, my hometown, Corvallis, is drafting plans to bulldoze a marsh for a police building. Where will the frogs sing then? And when I hiked around a national forest road through ancient trees, logging trucks were speeding by, spraying me with mud and carrying huge logs to the mill. Where will the owls call out? And here up in your part of the country, as we all rejoice in orca song, clicks and moans and cries like a baby's delight. The whales are starving, you know this. Because among other reasons, I have recently been told by scientists, PCBs and other contaminants are making the animals too sick to eat. And all the while, big oil executives, to increase unimaginable profits, are devising business plans that would knowingly take down the great systems that sustain human life and all the other lives on Earth. Oh, the peril. The moral peril, the planetary peril. Just this week in Houston, a major big oil executive, to the cheers of his colleagues and the complicit politicians, exulted. He said, "Our strategy is to stay as oily as we can for as long as we can." And just this week, President Biden approved the Willow Project. It's a carbon bomb that's going to blow away all the rest of his climate agenda. You and I were born into a world that's packed with life and beauty. But in the 50 years that I've been writing about nature, roughly 60% of individual mammals have been erased from the face of the earth. 60%. In my lifetime, on my watch. The population of North American songbirds, the red-winged blackbirds, and the robins has been cut by a third. A third of the forests gone in North America. In the Pacific Northwest, 90% of the ancient forests have been transmogrified into what? Huge homes, toilet paper, money. Half the grassland birds have been lost. On our watch, I'm sorry I have to say these things. The shorebirds, a 78% reduction. I walk on the shore, I count 12 turnstones. Where are their brothers and sisters? I used to count 100. Wandering tattlers, I count 1. Words are not enough to express the enormity of these slides towards extinction. So I have felt compelled to turn to music. And instead of just writing and sending my words out into the ethosphere, I have created 20 of these little tiny concerts. So I call them animal interludes. Each one is an excerpt from my new book, Earth Wild Music. And each one is read by a writer and accompanied by music. And what I'm hoping is that the music can carry the words into the hearts. The work of the music is to open people's hearts without breaking them. So I'd like to show you one of these animal interludes. All of them are up on the internet, on YouTube. This is called The Common Muir, and it's being read by my friend Robin Kimmerer, whom you may know as the author of Braiding Sweetgrass.
Wearing a yellow raincoat, a boy wandered the beach between the high tide line and the falling tide. He leaned over now and then to drop a treasure into his blue bucket. The little boy was whistling. Whenever he's content, he is whistling. The sandpipers piped. A gull threw back her head and brayed. The bell buoy chimed. I sat on a drift log, grinning, as the voices came together to shake the air into something lovely and pure. The boy suddenly paused and took a few steps backward. His whistling stopped. With his plastic shovel, the boy dug at a disheveled black form, matted in blown sand. It took him several tries to pry it into his bucket. I went to him as he turned toward me. What he had in his bucket was the limp body of a black and white seabird, a common murre. Murres have always been one of the most numerous of marine birds, maybe 13 to 24 million at their peak. But now, in the warming, souring ocean, they are struggling to find the fish they need to feed their chicks and keep themselves alive. I had hoped it would be a long time before the great starving would reach the Oregon coast. But this might be the beginning of it, in this blue bucket. I did not talk to the boy about this. Carefully, we emptied the bucket onto a polished log. Here was the body of the murre, feathers broken, head hanging. Here was a blue-by-the-wind sailor, a small jellyfish with a wing to catch the wind. Here was a mudstone, shaped by the fossilized shell of an ancient butter clam. The murre would want to be buried here at the beach, the boy decided, in the place it knows and loves best, where its mom and dad are probably nearby, looking for him. So this is what we did. We dug a hole behind the log, buried the murre in sand, and decorated the grave with the treasures the boy had found. Standing erect, looking out to sea, the boy whistled a sad song for the dead bird. And then, hand in hand, we walked back down the beach under the terrible silence of the empty sky.
My generation has done what no previous generation could do, Thomas Berry wrote, because they lack the technological power. And what no future generation will be able to do, because the planet will never again be so beautiful or abundant. It took 68 million years for birds to evolve. It has taken us 50 years to destroy half of them. It will take 5 to 7 million years for the Earth to recover the diversity it lost in our lifetimes. This has to be said. 5 times in planetary history, life has faced catastrophic extinction when a collision with an asteroid marked the end of the Cretaceous period 66 million years ago. Perhaps 80% of the species vanished, including most dinosaurs and lots of the small creatures of the seas. 5 massive extinctions when evolutionary development started over with what was left. And now, we're told, we live in the time of the 6th great extinction, which will bring the lovely Cenozoic era to a desolate end. Is it possible? Is it possible that human civilization has deployed the killing power of an asteroid 8 miles wide? How could it be? It's not hard to know. You just lift your eyes to the hills or glance across the valley or walk into Walmart. Growing human populations, deforestation, a dramatic, relentless destruction of habitat, overharvesting of the oceans, poisoning of land and water, the expansion of industrial agriculture, and climate change. And what causes that? The way of life. A constantly growing, all-consuming culture driven by proudly amoral extractive industries and brazenly bought and sold governments in deep collusion. The extractive, all-consuming economy reveals itself as a giant going out of business sale, planetary and moral bankruptcy. This is the economy of dying. Unless the world acts to stop ecosystem collapse, my students will tear out half the pages in their field guides. They won't need them. Already, it's clear that I'll write my last nature essay on a planet that is half as song-graced and life-drenched as the one where I began to write. What are we going to do? Wow. If our work is loving the world, we better be really clear about what it means to love a place and what it doesn't. So let's ask the students. Always, an old professor knows, if you're stumped, ask your students. So here's the rest of their list of what it means to love a person and to love a place. Number 4, to want the best for it, to fear its losses and grieve for its injuries. And number 5, to protect it ferociously, faithfully, and maybe tragically, but be helpless to do otherwise. So here we have it. Our work is loving the world, but we have to be really careful to know that there is number 4 and there is number 5. We have to be aware of our obligation to protect it. So I want to take you beside a pond, and I want to tell you a story. This is a segment from our film, The Extinction Variations. And this tells the story of the time when I understood, really, I think for the first time, viscerally understood the obligation that love imposes.
In the spring, when our granddaughter was born, I brought her to the pond so she could feel the comfort I had known there for so many years. Killdeer waddled in the mud by the shore, but not so many as before. Ahead of the coming heat, butterflies fed in the mud between the cracks, unrolling their tongues to touch salty soil. I held my granddaughter in my arms and sang to her then, an old lullaby that made her soften like wax in a flame, molding her little body to my bones. She fell asleep in my arms, unafraid. I will tell you, I was so afraid. Poets warned us, writing of the heartbreaking beauty that will remain when there is no heart to break for it. But what if it's worse than that? What if it's the heartbroken children who remain in a world without beauty? How will they find solace in a world without wild music? How will they thrive without green hills edged with oaks? How will they forgive us for letting frog song slip away? It isn't enough to love a child and wish her well. It isn't enough to open my heart to a bird-graced morning. Can I claim to love a child if I don't use all the power of my beating heart to preserve a world that nourishes children's joy? Loving is not a kind of la-di-da. Loving is a sacred trust. To love is to affirm the absolute worth of what you love and to pledge your life to its thriving, to protect it fiercely and faithfully for all time. Ring the Angelus for the salmon and the swallows. Ring the bells for frogs floating in bent reeds. Ring the bells for all of us who did not save the songs. Mother of God, ring the bells for every sacred emptiness. Let them echo in the silence at the end of the day. Forgiveness is too much to ask. I would pray for only this, that our granddaughter would hear again the little lick of music, that grace note toward the end of a meadowlark's song. Meadowlarks. There were meadowlarks. They sang like angels in the morning.
Loving is a sacred trust. To love is to affirm the absolute worth of what you love and pledge your life to its thriving, to protect it fiercely and faithfully for all time. So yes, our love is measured in grief. We can hear the world cry out all the messages that it's sending in the languages of fire and storm. And so we will welcome a grief that is magnificent and terrible to match the magnitude of our loss. Our love is measured also in fury. By what right have human decisions drained the veins of the world? So our love has to be measured in action. The Dalai Lama says, oh, so gently, it's not difficult to forgive destruction in the past that resulted from ignorance. Today, however, we have access to more information. It is essential, he says, that we re-examine ethically what we have inherited, what we are responsible for, and what we will pass on to coming generations. He's talking to you, and he's talking to me. So, what are our options here? I'll suggest 3. Option number 1, we can say, damage to the earth is wrong, and I will not participate. That's good. We can opt out of this overheated fossil fuel economy. We will live simply because we don't believe in taking more than our fair share. We'll do everything on the list of 50 things you can do to save the world. We will change out our light bulbs. We will recycle plastic. This is essential. I will live in my little electric house and drive my little electric car and recycle like a mad woman. But that is not enough. Option 2, we can say damage to the earth is wrong and I will not allow it. Now that's even better. We can stand against the devastation. Not another mountaintop, not another river, not another forest can be traded away for cash. Not on our watch. These aren't industries to sell. They belong to the future of the everlasting earth. Again and again, people stop me and they say, close to despair, they say, Kathy, what can one person do? My answer is stop being one person. Adrian Rich said, my heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I cast my lot with those who, age after age, preferably with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. That's what we will do. And who will our allies be? Well, our first ally is nature herself. Get on nature's committee. Nature is built to heal. Nature is profligate with its beauty. Nature is inventive, invasive, brilliant at what it does, which is continue to be. We'll sign up on that list. Our other allies are going to be like-minded people. If change occurs, it's going to be led not from some sudden moral awakening on the part of the government, but from the conscience of the people. That's you, and that's me. And that's a lot of people we haven't met yet because they might not look like us. But coming together in alliances, that's the superpower of human sapiens, of Homo sapiens. You know, the wolves have canine teeth, that's their superpower. Antelopes have speed. Lemmings have lots of children. What is our superpower? Through history, it has been the ability to come together in groups to act for the common good, and to find in that acting an unexpected joy and hope. Do we have also an option 3? Even better. We can stand up and say, this is wrong and we will not participate. This is wrong and we will not allow it. And this is wrong and we will show you a better way. Here we are. This is our work. This is the Marine Reserve. This is the community garden. This is the replacement of fossil fuels with energy generation that's gentle and regenerative. This is the wildlife corridor. This is shade trees planted in redline neighborhoods. This is a wetland preserve. This is rewilding. This is the wild and scenic river protection. This is honorable agriculture. This is the Jefferson Land Trust. There are ways of saving and restoring habitats that we haven't even thought of yet. This is a call to the greatest exercise of the human imagination the world has ever seen. So this is the way that we're going to make good on the promise that we whispered into the wispy hair of our children when they were born. We whispered, I will always love you. I will keep you safe. I will give you the world. We didn't mean, I will give you whatever's left scattered and torn on the table after the great cosmic going out of business sale. We meant, I will give you this beautiful, life-sustaining, bird-graced, tree-shaded, rain-polished world. We will give you summer chum salmon shivering over gravel beds, broad tidelands marked by the trails of snails and eelgrass beds glistening with fry. We will give you trumpeter swans with elegant necks. We will give you 5 generations of farmers. An osprey nest crowded with nestlings and the skeleton of a cutthroat trout. Children of this land, we will give you a ridge shaped like a dragon, and at its heart, a sacred mount streaked with moss and graced with generations of gratitude. We will give you ancient trees decorated with crows. We will give you violet green swallows and red-breasted nuthatches and red crossbills and red-tailed hawks and purple finches and golden-crowned kinglets and orange-crowned warblers, rainbows of birds and rainbows curving from the clouds and the rain and children in yellow raincoats. Protecting these future children of all species, that's the greatest gift a person can give in return for the gifts that the good earth has given us. Life and the living of it, light and the return of it, time and the turning tides. So thank you all for all you've given back to the good earth and for all you will give forward until the end of time. Bless you.
And thank you, Kathleen. You've inspired me like you always do. So now to our listeners. If you have questions for Kathleen Dean Moore, you'll find instructions in the chat function, which has just been enabled, and you can type out questions there. The staff here at the Land Trust will collect them. They might combine things that have sort of similar themes and funnel them to me, and I get to ask Kathleen. And in the moments while you out there in Zoom land are adding questions, I have one that I am going to start. And this time is precious. We don't have enough of it, of course. But Kathleen, I want to ask you, as we all gain that sort of deeper appreciation of the complexity and the beauty and the crisis that the natural world is facing and that we're a part of and we love, it's very, very easy to be overwhelmed. The enormity of the changes and the time frames, it can be devastating to the soul, to the sensitive beings that we are. And that overwhelmingness can just prevent us entirely from doing the tasks ahead of us that are so needed. What can you say to help guide us who may at least occasionally have that overwhelming feeling and go, oh, can I rise to this? And will it do any good? How can we transform those feelings or overcome them into taking some action?
Yes, we do feel this kind of overwhelm. We do feel how complicated everything is. We do understand that our own efforts are going to be small. And they may not do any good. So let's go ahead and let's just take the worst case scenario. Let's just say that we do not succeed. Let's just say that we were doing all of this work in a lost cause. Just imagine that. What are we going to do then? Well, Wendell Berry says we don't have the right to ask whether we will succeed. We only have the right to ask, is what we do the right thing? So we're not necessarily looking for results. Of course we want results, but we're people of integrity. We're people who act in the way we do because we think it's right regardless of the consequences. And so we're not going to be swallowed up by our hope for outcomes, always outcomes. What we're going to do is ask instead, what do I believe is right? And how can I best do it? How can I create that kind of honor and integrity in my own life? How can I make my life into a work of art that embodies my deepest values? That's our question.
That feels good even to listen to. The notion of do what's right and be true to your own self in that belief, kind of regardless of what the odds look like. I think that's a message we all can take. I'm going to ask the Land Trust staff to sort of tell me how we're doing in getting stuff together. Maybe I'll ask one more question. And I certainly enjoyed the reading from Robin Wall Kimmerer. I always do enjoy her reading. And she has brought us through her work such deep wisdom about listening to Indigenous ways of thinking and knowing. So for you, how has listening and learning from the wisdom and guidance of Indigenous cultures helped or guided you on your journey? And do you have advice for us how best to listen, to respect, and to learn from Indigenous cultures?
Yeah, I'm a philosopher educated in the Western tradition. I am a student of the Enlightenment. I am a child
Right.
in their great part. And it is very, very clear that absolutely clear that way of thinking has led us to a cliff edge.
Yes.
A cruel cliff edge. And that we have to think of something better. We have to understand that what they're telling us, what the Western European philosophers were telling us, that we are individual in competition, lords of the universe, in control, separate, it's just not true. And so the question becomes, what's going to take its place? And I am really heartened because I believe that we live in what I'm calling the age of the great convergence. It's just stunning that we would be living in this axial age when the great wisdom traditions of the world are coming together around the very same set of truths. You've got the Asian religions, you've got many of the Western religions, you've got indigenous wisdom, you've got what the ecologists are telling us, you've got what evolutionary theory is telling us. All of them are converging on this same set of truths, that we are born of this earth, we are of this earth, we are utterly dependent on this earth. If there's beauty in the earth, it can be expressed in us. We are called to celebrate, we are called to reciprocate, we are called to understand that in our kinship, in our love, we're finding the origin of our moral obligation to take part, to become part of this kind of moral order. So it heartens me, it absolutely thrills me to think that just when we need it the most, we are able to turn to all these sources of wisdom, most especially indigenous, and find a kind of way forward. It's stunning.
Powerful. So a couple of questions now from folks who have participated this morning, and I might combine a couple of these. But first of all, there is one that says, did you find yourself able to fall back in love with the lake after it had been burned?
Yes. And yes, and camping there. Can you imagine pitching a tent under the dead spars? It's harder to hike around the lake because there are just remember, pick up sticks. That's what the forest is like.
Mm-hmm.
A catastrophe of downed logs, but you have to pick your way through them. But between them, in these little pockets of refugia, are wildflowers I have never seen before, in an abundance I have never seen. The earth is built to heal. And when we can go to those wounded places and see how enthusiastically and how beautifully the earth is healing itself, we begin to think, then maybe we can't wallow in our grief either. Maybe we have to take a lesson from these spars. Listen to the woodpeckers. Listen to the beetles. Listen to the flowers pushing up through. Listen to the wind. And find our own life energy and life urgency. So yes, I have been back. We camped there. But I have to tell you the truth, that climate change is doing its job on the lake. And the lake is shrunken and hard to access. It's shrunken and muddy, and it's hard to launch a kayak. I couldn't take my students there anymore. So it's one thing or another, isn't it?
You know, and there's a follow-up question from one of the listeners. Well, it's kind of a follow-up. It's things like fires, you know, are natural, and they're important to the natural function of ecosystems. And certainly they have occurred through time regularly. And we certainly know that we've tried to repress fires. That's usually been the wrong thing to do for the health of the ecosystem. But how do you think about the sort of natural processes that do occur? And then how do you think about the human changes that have triggered our climate changes and have triggered things like the larger frequency and the larger damage that things like fires do? How do you have a mindset that allows both those natural forces and the things that humans have done that, I don't know, they're sort of like the natural forces, but they're much more than that?
Well, I think that our great teacher, in terms of what our obligations are and in terms of what's smart, our great teacher, of course, are the forests and the prairies. They've had a lot of years of figuring out how to endure and how to replenish themselves. And to break down not only the natural systems, But to break down the systems of replenishment, that's a double sin. And so our work, I think, is to ally ourselves with those natural systems. How does this world heal? How can I get out of its way? How can I empower the natural processes? How can I stop human forces from destroying these life-giving systems?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's, instead of, well, I want to go here. I guess I will. That is natural to feel grief about the destructive power of human beings, which is huge destructive power of human beings. But grief is all right because it's a measure of how much we love and how much we've lost. But I want to warn people about despair. Despair is quite a different thing. Despair is, grief is saying, this is wonderful, this is beautiful, this is full of meaning, and I've lost it. Despair is saying, this is meaningless, it doesn't mean anything to me, it has no value, and so I don't care that I've lost it. So I think what we need to do is find ourselves open to grief, just as we're open to love, and close ourselves off from the possibility of despair, which is moral abdication of the first order.
Yes. And I just looked at the clock, and sadly, oh so sadly, our time has run away from us. So let me sort of find, for those of you who have asked questions that we didn't get a chance to ask Kathleen, or those of you who have questions that are coming into your head and you haven't quite put words to them yet, I know those are really important. And I have a suggestion to all of the listeners, that you talk to your friends and family about what you've heard here today. Share your questions with them, explore the questions with them, and then together with friends and family, look for the inspirations and look for things that you can commit to so that you can act with moral integrity in our world. So I'm sort of shifting the burden of conversation to all of you, and shifting you all have the burden of action. So I'm very vocally saying it's yours now. So thank you again, Kathleen. This has been wonderfully inspiring. I could listen to you talk for ages. But it's time to return to Richard Tucker, our executive director. He's got a couple very special announcements. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Nan. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. We really do appreciate your participating today. Now we turn our attention to the Fairbank Award for Youth Environmental Action. This award was created this year to honor two very special people who have been important to the Land Trust since they moved to our community over 20 years ago. Owen and Sarah Fairbank are intrepid volunteers. They have been involved in all aspects of our work, from board membership to helping with fundraising, helping with events. They are truly inspiring, and they are examples for the community about how you can really help and get involved and make a difference. And what more fitting way to honor them is to have select a young person in our community who shows leadership, who shows commitment, who shows love for the place in which we live. And therefore, the award, the Fairbank Award for Youth Environmental Action was created. And I'm really happy to say that we received 9 nominations from around the community. And it was a very, very, very tough decision because we have very extraordinary young people in our community. We're very blessed in that regards. I wish there was such enthusiasm for the environment, which we called ecology back then, when I was in high school and then I was coming up in the world. And as you know, many of you know, I did not have the experiences in nature that a lot of people here have. I grew up in the suburbs and I saw my first animals at the zoo. And so I'm really inspired that this community offers our young people opportunities to be out in the world, to make a difference for the environment. And it's, like I said, it was a very, very difficult decision because we have such great examples here. But I'm really happy to announce that the person who wins this award this year is Diego Murray. Diego was nominated by 4 people from his Chimocum community. They had glowing things to say about this young person. And I'm going to ask Blaze to read an example of some of the things that were said about Diego.
Thanks, Richard. We're really excited to present this to Diego. One of the nominators for Diego wrote, "I have seen firsthand the impact of connecting youth with nature. I am sure that Diego's kind and gentle spirit is opening the hearts and minds of children who will become tomorrow's leaders, parents, and teachers. I trust that Diego's efforts will weave their way into a more environmentally responsible future. Facilitating experiences that intimately connect children with this earth will lead to a better home for us all."
Thank you. And Diego, here we will be presenting you with this award. It also comes with a cash prize of $500 to recognize your commitment to the community, your commitment to the environment, and the place in which we all love and live. And Diego, would you like to say a few words?
I mean, after Kathleen spoke, I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said more eloquently, but it really inspired me to just try and really push for the kids that I teach and everyone around me to just kind of, do their part in everything they can do. To just love our environment and take better care of it.
Well, we thank you. And we also thank you for, if you don't know, Diego is an instructor at the Cedar Root Folk School. And so he actually lives his commitments. And so Diego, we're very proud to offer you this award this year. And thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
I would now like to ask our board chair, Brian Rogers, to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Richard. And we're so pleased to be able to recognize and celebrate environmental leadership in our next generation with the award to you, Diego. And thank you, Dr. Moore. As president of the Jefferson Land Trust Board, and on behalf of my fellow board members, I want to extend my sincere thanks to you and Nan for your rich conversation. We're honored, truly honored, that you were willing to join us today to share your knowledge, insight, and reflections in such a moving way. As L.M. Montgomery wrote in Anne of Avonlea following Anne of Green Gables, "How dear the woods are, you beautiful trees. I love every one of you as a friend." I think it's safe to say that everyone at our virtual breakfast today shares this abiding love for the land. We're all deeply committed to taking personal action to protect it. Our love of the land brings us real joy as we reflect on happy memories of spending time in nature with loved ones, on our great good fortune of living in a place where we're surrounded by forests, local farms that nourish us, and wild landscapes that inspire us. But as Kathleen shared with us all, to deeply love a place also means to be deeply concerned about its future. This love and this concern are the dual drivers behind all our work with the Land Trust. So as we bring today's conversation to a close, as we think about the actions we can all take to protect the land, I'd like to invite everyone on this call to take urgent action to help care for this precious place for the generations to come. One way to do that is to volunteer. Every year, volunteers contribute more than 3,000 hours to restore our preserves, to create habitat so that wildlife can thrive, to write grants and support events, to undertake research, wildlife monitoring, and many other projects. So to all of you at the breakfast who are already volunteers, thank you. And if you've not yet joined our cadre of volunteers, I'd like you to invite you to check out a work party or to contribute your skills and expertise in other ways you choose. Another way to help protect this place is to give generously. I'd like to invite you to join me in making a gift in support of the vital work of the Land Trust. Whether it's your first gift or your 20th, your support powers all of our work. I know that as a monthly donor, nothing excites me more than knowing that my support goes directly into protecting the habitat that's so urgently needed by the species that surround us. And being on the inside of this organization, I know there are really important projects in process that are waiting for the funds to move forward, from salmon habitat projects to working forests to family farms that support our local food system. All of these urgently need your support. Your gift today helps protect the local farms, the living and working forests, and the wild green places of Jefferson County, and supports all the education programs we offer that help build a love of the land in the next generation of lovers of the land. The link to donate is available in chat and will be in an email you receive following the event. And thank each of you for taking action on behalf of the land we all love. With that, it's back to Richard to say a few final words.
Thank you, Brian. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending today. I love this place. I love this place because of the natural beauty. I love it because of the community. I'm not the most articulate person, but I will say that I am grateful I am here. And I'm grateful every day that I'm here. Thank you, everybody. We really do appreciate your attendance. And thank you, Dr. Moore, for your inspiring talk. Have a good afternoon, everybody.